everyone loves motivation. Well, sure, blah, blah, blah. This is until they meet someone who doesn't need it anymore. You've seen that person, the one who never seems tired, who keeps showing up when everyone else disappears. They don't talk much about goals or motivation. They just do. And somewhere deep inside, it scares you a little because you can feel the difference. They've crossed a line most people never reach. That line where emotion no longer dictates action and principle takes over. Discipline at that level isn't about pushing through pain. It's about not even noticing the pain anymore. It's when your standards become your nature. Now listen, this isn't about being perfect. It's about becoming inevitable. The philosopher Epictetus put it this way: first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. When I first heard that, I thought, that's it. That's the blueprint. Because everything, every action, every habit, every success begins with how you see yourself. Your beliefs create your behavior. Your behavior creates proof. That proof builds your identity. And that identity loops back, feeding the belief that started it all. That's what I call the self-concept loop, the invisible engine of every transformation. Let me explain it in plain language. You tell yourself, I'm not a morning person. Your brain stores that statement as truth. So every time your alarm rings at 5 a.m., your behavior bends to fit that belief. You hit snooze. Then you collect the proof. See? I can't wake up early. Now the belief is stronger than before. The loop tightens, but when you say, I'm becoming the kind of person who wakes up early, everything changes. It's believable, it's forward moving, and it gives your brain permission to look for proof. The first morning you get up early, even for 5 minutes, you've created evidence. That's neural reinforcement. Your brain rewarding alignment between thought and action. That's how you rewire identity. And the beauty? The loop works both ways. You can build a prison with it, or a kingdom. Now, here's what most people never realize. Your brain is designed to protect your current identity, not upgrade it. It has a built-in confirmation bias, meaning it filters the world to prove you're right about yourself. You think you're lazy? You'll notice every failure. You think you're capable? You'll notice every opportunity. The evidence you collect depends on the story you're telling. So if you want to change your life, you don't fight your brain. You train it. You give it new stories to confirm. You feed it micro proofs every day until the new identity becomes automatic. That's why every successful person you admire, from athletes to scientists to artists, has one thing in common. They stopped trying to be motivated. They built an identity that doesn't negotiate. There's an interesting story about this. A few years ago, I met a man named Elias Grant. He wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. He was an ordinary father of 2 from Detroit, working double shifts as an auto mechanic. He used to dream of starting his own repair shop, but he never had the time, or so he told himself. Every night he'd fall asleep scrolling through videos of entrepreneurs, feeling smaller with each swipe. One morning after missing his daughter's school recital because of overtime, something broke in him. He went home, sat in the dark kitchen, and wrote a single sentence on a scrap of cardboard. I'm becoming the kind of man who keeps his promises. That was his starting point. Not, I'm going to be successful. Not, I'll open a business. Just keep my promises. He taped that cardboard above his sink. Every day before work, he'd read it out loud. Then he began proving it. Micro-proofs. 10 push-ups. Reading 2 pages. Fixing 1 car after hours to save money. Each act whispered to his brain, see? You're that man. At first, his coworkers laughed. "You're dreaming again, Eli." But week by week, something shifted. He showed up earlier. He smiled more. He stopped complaining. Within 18 months, Elias had saved enough to rent a small garage. 2 years later, he quit his job and opened Grant's Auto & Sons. Today, his old boss brings his car there for service. Here's the twist. Elias swears the turning point wasn't the business. It was the night he stopped calling himself lazy. That's when his life started obeying a new identity. That's the secret, my friend. Discipline begins the moment you stop negotiating with your old self. When you tell your brain, "This is who I am now," and then to back it up with action, something primal happens. You start seeing proof everywhere. The neural pathways of hesitation shrink. The circuits of action strengthen. Scientists call this neural adaptation. The same process that makes a pianist's fingers move before thought or a soldier react before fear. In plain English, you do it enough times, and the doing starts doing you. And that's where scary discipline lives. Not in suffering, in simplicity. You see, emotion fades, motivation dies, but identity stays. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your standards. And once your standard becomes sacred, you no longer ask, "Do I feel like it?" You just do it because that's who you are. I know how to build a system that rewires your brain for unstoppable follow-through. Because you don't need more motivation. You need to rebuild the loop that decides who you are. So, what's really happening inside that mind of yours? See, your brain is a storyteller, and it doesn't care whether the story is helpful or harmful. It just wants consistency. Whatever you repeat becomes truth. Every time you say, "I'm not organized, I always mess up, I never stick to anything," you're rehearsing failure. And the brain loves rehearsal. It rewards familiarity with chemicals that make the pattern easier to repeat. That's not weakness. That's design. The good news? You can hijack that design. Psychologists call it stimulus control. You place consistent cues around a new habit, so your brain links context with behavior. It's why monks wake at the same time, why soldiers train at dawn, why athletes have rituals before a game. The cue tells the body, "This is what we do now." When Elias woke up at 5 a.m. every morning to do push-ups beside his kitchen sink, that space became sacred ground. Eventually, the smell of coffee alone triggered his body to move before thought. That's not magic, that's neuroplasticity at work. But listen carefully. Repetition without reflection is just routine. Repetition with awareness is transformation. Every evening, Elias wrote 3 lines in a notebook. What did I keep my promise on today? What tried to stop me? How did I respond? That tiny ritual was more than journaling. It was neural reinforcement. Each answer told his brain, "We are consistent. We act despite resistance." Within weeks, his self-concept loop, belief, behavior, proof, identity began to lock in. The voice of doubt grew quieter because the brain had less evidence to support it. It's hard to argue with facts, especially when the facts are your own actions. Now here's the tricky part. Your brain doesn't want to upgrade easily. It loves efficiency more than success. Changing habits means burning energy, and your brain interprets that as danger. That's why when you try something new, you feel resistance. It's biology protecting the old story. So instead of fighting that resistance, expect it. Anticipate it like a storm you've already seen on the radar. When the lazy voice says, "Just tomorrow," don't argue. Smile. Recognize it as a system check. Then move anyway. Every time you move despite the voice, you're rewiring neural confidence. That's not willpower, that's implementation intention. A method researchers at Yale found triples habit success rates because it eliminates decision fatigue before it starts. You decide once, then act forever. Now let's talk about emotion. Most people treat motivation like gasoline, something they need every day. But discipline is electric. Once the current flows, it powers itself. When you repeat small wins long enough, your dopamine system recalibrates. The brain stops chasing novelty and starts rewarding completion. That's why monks, marathoners, and master artists feel peace in repetition. Their pleasure comes from doing, not from variety. There's an old quote by the writer Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. That's discipline. You strip away the noise until only what matters remains. And yes, there's a price. When Elias started skipping weekend parties to work on his business plan, some friends stopped calling. When he missed a few birthdays, his brother said he'd changed. And they were right, he had. But that's what growth looks like from the outside. It looks like betrayal to those still standing still. Every new level of life requires the death of an old identity. But don't confuse solitude with loneliness. The silence of discipline is the forge where greatness is shaped. If you've ever felt misunderstood while chasing your goals, good. That's the signal you're on the edge of transformation. When people say you've become obsessive, what they mean is you've stopped negotiating with your weakness. They fear that kind of certainty because it reminds them what's possible. Now, here's where it gets powerful. When you link every small action to who you're becoming, you create micro proofs that outvote your doubt. That's why I tell my clients, don't track perfection, track continuity. Miss a day? Fine. Never miss twice. Fall off the plan? Shrink the goal, not the standard. You can do one push-up, write one sentence, meditate for one breath. That's still momentum. That's still you keeping your promise. Because the moment you stop completely, you're teaching your brain that the identity isn't real. And that's how the old self sneaks back in. Elias once told me something I'll never forget. He said, discipline isn't what I thought it was. I thought it meant doing hard things, but really, it's doing simple things long enough for them to become sacred. Think about that. Sacred. Not mechanical, not robotic, sacred. Because when you repeat something with intention, it becomes a prayer. Every rep, every page, every dawn you show up is a quiet declaration to the universe. I am still becoming. So before we move to the final part, let's anchor this in you. Take a moment right now. Think of one area where you've been saying, I'm not that kind of person. Maybe it's health. Maybe relationships. Maybe focus. Now reframe it. I'm becoming the kind of person who, and finish that sentence. Write it. Whisper it. Feel it. That's the first brick of your new identity. Consistency isn't about trying harder. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't have to try. You've heard the saying, discipline is freedom. It sounds poetic until you live it. Because in the beginning, discipline doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like friction. It feels like saying no when everything in you screams yes. It feels like missing comfort, missing fun, missing approval. But when you stay with it long enough, something miraculous happens. That friction turns into flight. Let me explain why. Each time you follow through on a promise, no matter how small, your brain releases a quiet dose of dopamine and serotonin, the same chemicals that reinforce trust and belonging. Except this time, You're building trust with yourself. And when you trust yourself, the world starts trusting you. That's how confidence is born, not from hype, but from history, from the record you keep with yourself. Elias didn't become unbreakable overnight. Around week 10 of his transformation, his body gave out. One winter morning, he overslept for the first time in months. He woke to his alarm flashing 6:23 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. His old voice whispered, "See? You lost it. You're back where you started." He almost believed it. But then he remembered his new rule: never miss twice. So he threw on his jacket, went to the garage, and did 10 push-ups on the cold concrete. He laughed while doing them. "Still counts," he said. That moment, not the grand ones, was the victory. Because when discipline survives disappointment, identity becomes permanent. Let me tell you something most motivational videos won't. You will fail. You will slip. You will doubt. But that's not the end. That's the proof you're in the arena. Every fall is a data point. Every restart strengthens the neural pathways of resilience. In neuroscience, it's called error-based learning, the process by which your brain improves predictions through failure. The only thing failure teaches is how not to quit. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be perfect, you finally become consistent. So here's your challenge. Simple but not easy. For the next 7 days, I want you to choose one non-negotiable action. Just one. Something small enough to finish, even on your worst day, but meaningful enough to move your story forward. It could be write for 10 minutes every morning. Walk 1 mile at sunset. Meditate for 5 minutes before work. Read 2 pages before bed. Whatever it is, it must meet 3 conditions. Specific. You know exactly what done looks like. Scheduled, same time, same place, no debate. Sacred. Nothing else replaces it. Not mood, not chaos, not company. Then every night, record 1 line in your journal. I kept my promise. Do that for 7 days straight. Don't chase motivation. Don't wait for perfect. Just execute. By day 3, your brain will fight back. Boredom, excuses, fatigue. Expect it. Smile at it. That's not failure. That's the sound of an old identity dying. By day 5, you'll start feeling a quiet pride. Not from others noticing, but from realizing you can trust your own word again. And by day 7, you'll understand something most people never do. Discipline isn't a cage. It's the key. I want to tell you one last thing about Elias. One of those kids from town once asked him, "Mr. Grant, what made you successful?" Elias smiled and said, "I started doing the things I said I'd do long enough for my kids to believe me." That's the power of scary discipline. When your actions become predictable in the best way possible, the world starts adjusting to your standards. People count on you. Opportunities find you. Your reputation becomes your resume. And here's the truth. That level of discipline will scare people. They'll say you're too focused, too strict, too obsessed. But what they're really saying is, you're living at a level where our excuses don't survive. Smile at them. Love them. But keep moving. Because discipline, at its core, is not about control. It's about love. Love for your future self. Love for your craft. Love for the people who depend on your consistency. When I speak to teams, students, and dreamers, I always remind them, you can't be committed and comfortable at the same time. Comfort builds habits of escape. Commitment builds habits of expansion. And the moment you decide which one you'll serve, your future rearranges itself around that decision. Before we close, I want you to remember this quote from the poet Rainer Maria Rilke. The purpose of life is to be defeated by greater and greater things. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. You're supposed to grow strong enough to face harder challenges, to be defeated forward. Every repetition, every early morning, every small promise kept. That's you being defeated by something greater and rising stronger every time. Picture the version of yourself you've always wanted to be: calm, focused, dependable. Now whisper, "I'm becoming that person." Say it again, because in that sentence lies the seed of a new story. One that, if you water it daily, will grow into something unbreakable. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to keep walking long enough for it to get tired of following you. And when you reach that moment, when your discipline becomes your nature, when your consistency becomes your peace, people will look at you and say, "That's not normal." Smile again, because normal never changed the world. Remember this: discipline isn't about doing hard things. It's about doing them so consistently that it frightens even you. It's the death of who you were and the birth of who you were meant to be. Now go. Start your 7 days. And when that alarm rings tomorrow, don't think. Just move, because that's who you are now.